Today we have shocking news about the Apple iPhone 14 series, and that's coming up right after this. We've got some shocking news about the iPhone 14 series and more confirmations of specs and design. Before we get started though, please like the video if you're a fan of Apple, and let me know in the comments what your most wanted iPhone 14 feature is. And if you haven't already, then hit subscribe now so you don't miss a thing in the future. So the first story of the day, we've got a report from Jeff Poo, who says that the Pro models will be increasing their memory and they're going to be coming with 8GB of RAM. This will be for the Pro models only, but given the memory bump, we can also assume that the lower end iPhone 14 models will be increased to 6GB of RAM. Now interestingly enough, Jeff Poo also states that the iPhone 14 models are going to start with 64GB of storage, despite its predecessor starting from 128, and it's unclear at the moment why this is, but it could be a price reduction strategy. Now Jeff Poo also states that they will be getting a camera upgrade to a 48 megapixel primary camera, and this backs up early information from reliable analyst Ming-Chi Kuo. The report states that it's going to be a 48 megapixel wide angle, and it's also going to have pixel binning technology, and this means in ideal lighting conditions it will shoot at 48 megapixel, and then in more difficult conditions it can drop to 12 megapixels for better low light photography. Now we've also got a tweet from Leaks Apple Pro that says Apple is working on iPhone logic boards that don't contain a SIM slot, although he can't confirm if the iPhone 14 is going to include one or not. Now personally, I feel SIM cards are a thing of the past and SIM-free is the future, but not quite yet. Many people use different SIM cards for international travel, and there are still providers out there that don't support eSIM. The 3 network is one of the main UK networks and it still doesn't support eSIM, so for Apple to remove the SIM card at this moment in time would massively reduce their sales, so I just can't see it happening yet. Now next up, we've got shocking reports claiming that the iPhone 14 will still have a notch, and while this has worried people, it's only partially true. As we've already covered on this channel, the lower end iPhone 14s are still going to have a notch, and it's only the iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro Max that are going to have the new punch hole camera. While many people are still doubting the punch hole camera in the iPhone 14, there are plenty of new confirmations coming in now, so it is looking very likely. The Elec have reported that Samsung are going to be the only supplier of punch hole cameras for the iPhone 14 Pro, but when it comes to the iPhone 14 Pro Max, they're going to be using Samsung panels as well as panels provided by LG. We also have a tweet from Dylan yesterday who states that the iPhone 14 Pro models will have a punch hole selfie camera and that the Face ID sensors will be embedded under the display. He also goes on to say that functionality of the Face ID sensors has not been negatively affected by this change. Interestingly enough, he also then commented that he's hearing of a pill-shaped camera cutout instead of a punch hole, but personally I just don't see this happening. If they're placing Face ID cameras underneath the display, then there's going to be no need for a pill-shaped cutout. We've still got plenty of room in the bezel for proximity and other sensors, so it just doesn't make sense. Personally, I feel that it would only be a pill-shaped cutout if the Face ID does not function correctly under the display, so take this with a grain of salt for now. But bottom line, it's looking pretty certain now that the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 14 Max will be retaining the notch, whereas the iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro Max are going to have a punch hole camera. Now of course, there are plenty of other upgrades from the predecessor, and for those excited, we're now going to run through the full specs, design and the expected pricing for each iPhone 14. For my regular viewers, you guys have seen this, so just skip to the next video, but if you are new here, then hit subscribe now and we'll get right into it. To start with, the new entry-level model is going to be the iPhone 14. With the iPhone 14, we get a 6.1-inch Super Retina OLED display. It's expected to be a 90Hz display with an 1170 by 2532 resolution, and this gives us 460 pixels per inch. On the front, we'll be getting a 12-megapixel selfie camera, but unlike the Pro models, we will have a notch instead of a punch hole camera. On the rear, it's expected that they're going to stick with a dual camera setup, but it may be the first time we get a LiDAR scanner on the lower end models. The dual camera setup is going to consist of a wide angle and an ultra wide camera, and the phone is going to be powered by the new A16 Bionic, which is going to be a 4nm chipset that's both more powerful and efficient than the A15. It's going to be coming with 6GB of RAM and a choice of 128, 256 or 512 storage. The phone's going to be powered by a 3240 mAh battery with improved fast charging, likely to be something like 25 watts. It's expected to support both wireless and reverse wireless charging, and it's also expected to come with 5G, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2 and ultra wideband support. It will of course ship with the new iOS 16. When it comes to pricing, Apple have been keeping things relatively the same lately, so we're expecting the base model to start from $799. Now next up, we've got the iPhone 14 Pro. With the iPhone 14 Pro, we get a 6.1-inch ProMotion OLED display. It's a 120Hz LTPO display with a resolution of 1170 by 2532, which gives us 440 pixels per inch. On the front, we get another 12-megapixel wide-angle camera with Face ID sensors embedded in the display. On the rear, we get a triple camera setup consisting of a 48-megapixel wide-angle as the primary, a 12-megapixel ultra-wide and a 12-megapixel telephoto, and of course we get the additional LiDAR scanner. The phone is going to be powered by the A16 Bionic, and it's expected that it's going to come with a choice of 8GB of RAM, 128, 256, 512 and 1TB of storage. The phone's going to be powered by a 3240 mAh battery with improved fast charging, likely to be 25 watts. It's expected to support both wireless and reverse wireless charging, and it's also expected to come with 5G, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2 and ultra wideband support. It's going to ship with iOS 16, and the base model of the iPhone 14 Pro is expected to launch from $999. Now next up, we've got the new edition, which is the iPhone 14 Max. The iPhone 14 Max is expected to come with a 6.7-inch Super Retina OLED display. It's expected to be a 90Hz display with a resolution of 1284 by 2778. On the front, we get a 12-megapixel selfie camera, and on this model we also have a notch. And then on the rear, we get a 12-megapixel wide angle as the primary, a 12-megapixel ultra-wide and the LiDAR scanner. The phone's going to be powered by the new A16 Bionic, and it should be coming with 6GB of RAM and a choice of 128, 256 or 512 storage. The iPhone 14 Max is going to be powered by a 4352 mAh battery, again with fast charging likely to be 25 watts. It's expected to support both wireless and reverse wireless charging, and it's also going to come with 5G, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2 and ultra wideband support. Of course, it's going to be shipping with iOS 16. When it comes to pricing, we expect the iPhone 14 Max to start from $899. Now finally, we've got the top end model, the iPhone 14 Pro Max. The iPhone 14 Pro Max is coming with a 6.7-inch ProMotion OLED display. We're expecting a 120Hz LTPO display with a resolution of 1284 by 2778, giving us 458 pixels per inch. On the front, we get a 12-megapixel punch-hole selfie camera with Face ID under the display, and then on the rear it's the triple camera setup and a LiDAR scanner. The triple camera consists of a 48-megapixel wide angle, a 12-megapixel ultra-wide and a 12-megapixel telephoto. The phone's going to be powered by the A16 Bionic, and it's expected that it's going to come with a choice of 8GB of RAM, 128, 256, 512 or 1TB storage. The phone's going to be powered by a 4352 mAh battery with improved fast charging, likely to be 25 watts, and again it's likely to support both wireless and reverse wireless charging. It's expected to come with 5G, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2 and ultra wideband support, and it will of course ship with iOS 16. The base model of the iPhone 14 Pro Max is expected to launch from $1,099, and of course the higher storage options will cost more. So overall, the iPhone 14 is looking incredible, and it's great. In terms of the hardware, they've already got a good setup going, so focusing on design is a good move. Of course, the iPhone 14 series is going to be launching in September 22, and as more and more leaks come in, I'll continue to share them as they do. As always though, I'd like to know your thoughts in the comments. So who out there is excited for the iPhone 14, and what model are you waiting for? But thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, smash a thumbs up. If you didn't, hit the thumbs down twice, and I'll see you guys in the next one.